Few days ago, I hit level 90 on my rogue alt. While leveling, I used Twisted Blades and alternated between Shadow Clone and Death Trap. While both setups were good and could complete tier 50 Nightmare dungeons, some affixes like Death Pulse, Cold, and Poison were quite annoying. Also, given how difficult it can be to sometimes see floor hazards, I felt like Twisted Blades was a little too squishy for higher Nightmare dungeons. So I made the switch to Rapid Fire. This particular setup does not use basic attacks. Instead, it relies on improved Rapid Fire modifier to generate energy. Each time you hit a vulnerable target with Rapid Fire, you gain 15 energy plus whatever bonuses you have. This means having multiple ways to make enemies vulnerable is very important. This build has 3 ways of doing it. The primary way of inflicting vulnerable is through the exploit glyph. The second way is with shadow imbuement. And lastly, the backup method is through poison trap and the blast trapper aspect. This also guarantees that you can keep bosses vulnerable if they survive the initial application of vulnerable from the exploit glyph. Besides improved rapid fire, this build also has 3 other ways of generating energy. First is the innervation passive. This gives me a 30% lucky hit chance to gain 8 energy. I also put at least 1 point in the aftermath passive so I gain energy every time I use Shadow Clone. The third way is through the Umbral Ring aspect, which restores up to 8 energy every time I crowd control an enemy. This is also why I have Mangler's aspect, which gives me a lucky hit chance to daze vulnerable targets. Since resource generation isn't an issue, I can use Preparation Spec to reduce the cooldown of Shadow Clone. Shadow Clone is great since not only does it give a huge damage burst, but it also functions as a CC break and gives 5 seconds of unstoppable. This is enough to burst down annoying elites with cold or chilling wind affixes. Finally, I have Dash and Shadow Step for added mobility. It's important to note that Shadow Step also acts as a CC breaker. It does not give unstoppable however, so you can get CC'd again if you are not careful. Compared to Twisted Blades, this rapid fire build is easier to use in my opinion. I'm not completely sure about the side-by-side damage comparison, but it feels like rapid fire has higher single target damage but lower AoE DPS. This is an okay trade-off since rapid fire has a much safer playstyle. This build is pretty tanky as well. I'm running it with Protector, Disobedience, and Ambrose. Among the 3, Disobedience is the best one due to how armor currently works. The other 2 can be replaced by something like Cheat's defensive aspect. No matter what defensive aspects you do however decide to run, you should always prioritize good defensive affixes on chest and legs. This means prioritizing max health and damage reduction. Then on helm and rings, those can roll max health. As for offensive aspects, I'm running repeating on crossbow, conceited and edgemaster on the one-handed swords, and accelerating on the choker. If you replace aspect of the protector, you should also replace conceited with something like smiting for increased critical chance. This build is fat enough to face Tank Butcher in World Tier 4 and melt him in 5 seconds. If you guys want to try out the build, I'll put a link to the planner in the description. Hopefully this helps some of you, and see you guys in the next video.